Good evening, everyone. My name is Shantae Moore. I'm one of the certified financial educators here at Oak Brook Financial Center. We have been teaching, well, first of all, April, if you didn't know, is Financial Literacy Awareness Month. And we waited to the very end of the month after doing tons and tons of presentations to kind of just round off National Financial Literacy Awareness Month with I would say this is our key program that we offer across the country, nationwide. We've taught this workshop at big corporations, at churches, at community centers, schools. We've done this at hospitals. So for those of who are attending, I want you to keep this in mind as something that we could bring to your community and your local organization. So I'm going to start us off with a quick video. It really just highlights our financial literacy campaign and the good work that we do.
WealthWave has a significant impact that reaches beyond local communities. With over 350 appearances on major networks like ABC, CBS, CNBC, Fox, NBC, and SiriusXM, and features in Newsweek and the Wall Street Journal, WealthWave, along with the Money Book series, has established a strong presence in the financial industry. These media features not only enhance our message of financial education, but also add credibility. They enable us to engage a wide audience and lead conversations on financial literacy, reinforcing our role in promoting financial empowerment. Our dedicated network of educators work together to foster knowledgeable and financially empowered clients.
So as you can see, this platform has been all across the country. We've had every alphabet channel, ABC, CNBC, CNN, every news outlet we've been on. And that's a big deal. You know, when you're thinking about a company, you know, whose mission is truly to teach the masses and educate the masses, not just here in Chicagoland. We have guests from all across the country joining in. So we're very proud that we have amazing resources. We'll talk about those resources through the presentation, but that we're truly reaching the 99% of Americans who actually need financial education and they need professional financial guidance. So I'm not going to ramble on any further. I want to introduce our first excellent speaker. Our first speaker is Anthony Gurrieri. He's actually been in the financial services industry for over 25 years. Almost 30 years. He told me 3 decades. Anthony has built an amazing office here in Oak Brook Financial Center with some of our other leadership partners. And, you know, someone I truly look up to who has gone out, you know, to communities all across the Chicagoland, all across the country to bring the message of financial literacy to those individuals. So Anthony, and he's going to be our first speaker, and then he'll get us started with today's presentation. So please join me and welcome Anthony.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. So I'm excited to be able to share with you tonight, teach our class on our How Money Works Essentials, which is based here on our best-selling book, over 1 million of these copies now in circulation, How Money Works. Stop Being a Sucker. It's the first of now that's 4 books now that we have as part of our book series. So I'm excited to share this information because I didn't know any of this when I first learned about this. 29 years ago is when I first began my journey of financial education, and it wasn't from college. It was actually when I first learned about this and was introduced to this type of company. And what really got my attention all those years ago was that they were willing to bring financial strategies and education to people like my family, which middle income, working class people. And then I found my future at that time. I found my vocation and started working with the business shortly after that. And that's pretty much all I've done is work here. And I love this book because it's been out now just over 5 years. As you saw, it's been featured on, you know, all those different stations. What I love the book is because it's simple. It takes about 1 hour to read, and it cuts through all the stuff that's not necessary. There's all kinds of financial books out there that are about that thick, right? And they just really overwhelm people with information and don't really give them what they need to understand. So let's start with addressing this issue about sucker, right? Some people can kind of feel, maybe even get offended by the word sucker, okay? And the reason why we use the word sucker is because when you go into a financial institution, right? I don't know if it's still like this, but a little while back, and you open up an account at one of these banks, they generally give you suckers, okay? And does anyone know what the name of those suckers are?
Dum-dums.
Dum-dums. So when I first read this in a book, I'm like, are they really like, who is some guy in some big towers? Like, I think we'll give them candy, we'll give them dum-dums, right? They probably own the dum-dums too, right? Well, we prefer to give people Smarties. Both of them will rot your teeth, but at least one will leave you with some money, okay? So anyway, let's talk about why it's important to think like the wealthy, right? An investment in knowledge pays the best interest. You don't need to be wealthy to think like the wealthy. In fact, you will never be wealthy unless you actually know how to think like the wealthy, right? And the proof is in people who win the lottery. The vast majority of people who win the lottery end up actually bankrupt. Yeah, I met a couple, they won $2 million and they were bankrupt shortly after that. How does that happen? Right? Well, it's a gambling mentality. You need to think like the wealthy, right? So let's talk about the word sucker a little more, right? Think about it. Money sucks up your time, it sucks up your freedom, and it sucks up your income. The number one financial literacy, the number one economic crisis in the world is financial illiteracy. It's literally lack of understanding of how money works, okay? A recent study on financial literacy found that only 30% of the people in the world are financially literate. And did a study, and people just couldn't answer basic questions. And take a look at this. Roughly 50%, 44% of people cannot even cover a $400 emergency. Just think about that. This is in America, okay? It is crazy. 43% of student loan borrowers are not making payments. That's about to change come month of May, right? Like it or not, that's a lot of people in a situation. They don't know how they're going to do it. They've been deferring with no education, who's no understanding of how to get out of debt, right? How they get in that situation. Again, just the process of selecting the right college for the right reason. That in itself, if you're not financially literate, you're going to find yourself with no degree possibly and a whole bunch of debt, right? And you might even have a degree and not make enough money to pay that. So that's another thing. $9,300 the average credit card balance. If you pay that over 30 years, you end up giving them $37,000. Isn't that awesome? And 33% of American adults have zero retirement savings. Is it because they don't make enough money? Maybe in some cases, but the same people that are not saving for the retirement are driving brand new cars. How is that? It's just a lack of understanding, right? It all begins with what's taught in schools, okay? Only 28 out of 50 states even require high school students to take a personal financial course to graduate. But what do they teach in that course? How to balance a checkbook? The app does that for you now, right? They teach them such basic things. They don't teach them the principles how to build wealth, right? Unfortunately, still a big part of the country doesn't even have basic financial literacy class, right? So Illinois was one of those recently, and they've been added to it. But what's interesting is I met a lady who was in charge of like implementing that program. She said the problem is that the teachers are not financially literate. So how are they going to teach the students? So this is a problem that is continuing to just get bigger, okay? And you want to get caught in the sucker cycle, right? Lack of financial literacy traps people in the sucker cycle often for life. The sucker gets a paycheck. Instead of putting his money to work, he hands money to someone else who then builds wealth with the sucker's money, right? Think about eating out. And I get it. Sometimes you're busy, you got to get a bite to eat. But some people don't want to. They spend every single day they go out to eat. Have you ever looked at how much that costs these days? You could go for a family of 4, try to go to Chipotle. You walk out of there spending $50, $60. If you order guacamole in there, oh my God, got to add another 10% on top of that, right? And so I use them as a reference because it's actually decent food, right? And so what about subscription services? We got to have Prime, and we got Netflix, and we got to have Disney, and we got Hulu. Really? Is there that much time to watch that much TV, right? Coffees and lattes. I look, man, Starbucks. What is it now for a cup of coffee? $4. If you put milk in there, it's like $5. They put cream, it's like $6. $7, $8. I mean, then there's drinking alcohol, right? I mean, I'm sure, you know, whether you drink or not, I mean, that's another one. Lottery tickets, ride shares. Now, some of this stuff is necessary, but if you don't take the time to look at what you're actually spending, you're unconsciously really throwing money away, okay? And so that's how people get caught in a sucker cycle. Now, we just talked about how much people have for retirement. It's not enough, right? So no generation is saving enough, right? It's like saving for retirement is like a plane, right? You need two wings. Right now, most people have Social Security and maybe some money in a 401k. In fact, the average person who's 60 to 69 years old, okay, so these are either in retirement or about to retire, have $195,000 in a 401k. If you make $50,000 a year, just very medium, right? Very middle of the road. How long will it take for you to run out of money? Less than 4 years. Less than 4 years, you won't have enough money in retirement, right? And Social Security, there's a lot of concern about Social Security. Is it going to be there? What's definitely going to run out of money within the next roughly 10 years. And that doesn't mean you won't get Social Security, but what it means is that right now we're on track for your Social Security to be cut, to be reduced if something's not done. Okay. And the people who will be working will be paying for those that are retired. So when we look at personal savings, that's the other side of it. What do we have? Well, millennials on average have $23,000 saved. Generation Xers, $66,000. And you got your baby boomers, right? About 10,000 of them roughly are turning 65 every day, $152,000. So are Americans on track? Obviously, it's a problem. It's a crisis. So when we look at, will you have enough? So the question for everybody on the call here, on the webinar and here live, is, are you going to run out of money in retirement? Are you on track to have enough? That's scary, right? Because this is a real issue. You have your Social Security, you have a little bit of 401k. That's how much most people have, but that's how much they're lacking. And I just showed you the numbers based on what people have saved for retirement. Okay. So what are you going to do if you have insufficient income? Go back to work, change your lifestyle, maybe live with your children? Most people don't want to do that. Okay. So where we come in is teach people how to provide how to build a reliable income, savings that last as long as you do, with the potential of leaving a legacy. So no matter how long you live, you can never run out of money. So it's been amazing over the past 20 plus years that I've been able to sit down with people that were similar to my parents' background, some of them with more, some of them with less, and be able to show them how to create predictable, reliable income in retirement so they never run out of money. That's what we do here, right? Now, have you ever heard of the principle of compound interest? Okay. The power of compound interest refers to the growth potential of money over time by leveraging the magic of compounding, which is interest paid on the sum of deposit plus all interest previously paid. So let's talk about the difference between simple interest versus compound interest. Right? How many of you knew the difference before you saw this information? Not many, right? So simple interest is you only receive interest on the original principal amount every single year. Okay, so let's look at what this looks like. So let's say you started, and we're talking about over a 50-year period of time, okay? Someone's literally more than adult life, right? If you earn 9% simple interest on an original investment of $1,500, and you made 9% on that from that original amount every single year, by the time you reach 50 years into the future, you'd have $8,250. That's simple interest, okay? Compound interest takes that exact same amount of money, the same interest. The only difference is it's the interest that you earn gets added to the original amount and keeps getting added and compounded, added and compounded. We go from 100, we go to 132,000 versus $8,250. I want you to ask yourself, ask a friend of yours, ask a family member, hey, do you know the difference between simple and compound interest? See if they can explain it to you, and you'll start to see what the big problem is. How are people supposed to build wealth if they don't even understand how to build compound interest? You're not going to take the actions that you need in order to be able to accomplish that. So here's an example of how a little bit of money can go a very long way, okay? So there's an example of a few different people. Let's pretend they're all next door neighbors. In fact, let's say they all live in the same building complex. One right next to the other. It's a condo. We got one who's going to get 1% interest. One's going to get 3% interest. Another's going to make 6%. Then we're going to have someone who makes 9%. They can literally all live next to each other. Okay. And they're going to start at the age 25 years old. And they're going to grow that money until age 67. Okay. So if they put $178 a month, start at age 25, that money at 1% will turn into $111,434. Okay? So we're gonna say that's Michael over here, right? Then Susan over here, she decides, I'm gonna put $178. She finds a high interest savings account and she puts it at 3%. Well, she's gonna have 61% more than Michael and will have 179,000. So she did better than Michael by a significant amount. But then we got Todd right next to him. Todd is like, I'm gonna be a little smarter. I'm gonna take a little bit of chance. I'm gonna find my place. I'm gonna find a place where I can make 6%. Well, Todd's money is gonna be 263% more, totaling 404,000. So right now, Todd's the smartest person, right? Then we have Gabriella. She's a genius because she found a place where she can make 9% of her money, and that money is going to grow to $1 million. So understand when you look at this, same amount of money, same age, only difference, financial literacy, knowing the difference. One has $1 million, one has 111,000. Michael's got 111. Gabriella's got $1 million. Think about that.
I wanna
Down
date
and more.
her.
You want to be her, right? You
I
want
wanna
to
date her.
You want to date her, all right? He wants to date her. Unfortunately, he's married, so he can't. That's not gonna work, right? But engaged. So that's not gonna work, Michael. You gotta try another strategy, okay? So I just process that for a minute and wonder why one generation gets wealthier in this country, right? One demographic gets wealthier and others just continue to just keep working harder. So the poor get poorer, the rich get richer, and you know what happens in the middle class? They just keep working harder. They're the people that just they don't give up. They go on and work a second job and a third job. First thing they need to learn is how to make money. So here's another example of the importance of starting early. Okay, now it's never too late, but we do want to show you the importance of starting early. So we have Sarah over here who starts at the age of 22, and what she's going to do is set aside $4,000 a year or $333 a month and does it from the age of 22. It's hard to see that till age of 30. Okay, doesn't put another dime in. All right, $4,000 a year, $333 a month, doesn't put any more money in, and then just lets that money grow. What's the assumption over here? Okay, the assumption is that money is going to grow from $32,000 all the way to $1.4 million. What a difference. The difference, 9% interest and time. Now, George, on the other hand, he's going to invest it in the same place. So they both fall 9%, right? So we're on the smart end of it, but George doesn't start till he's 30, which is not that old, right? Just starts at 30 years old. Puts away $4,000 a year and does it for 38 years, just 30 more years than Sarah. Puts 152,000 versus 32,000, still never catches Sarah. So George ends up at 1.3 million. He put 152. She put 32,000. That's financial literacy. Do you think that that's something you want to learn? Is that if you're not 30 or you're not 22, you're a little bit older than that, like me? Is that something you want to teach your kids? Is that someone you want to tell everybody that you know that you care about? Is that something they should understand? Absolutely. Right. Now, this next example, I like it because you can kind of find yourself on this graph here. Where do you fit in on this? Okay, again, we're using 9%. So that's the consistent rate of return. Okay. What we've done here is we've adjusted for age. And the goal is to hit $1 million. Right? Now, $1 million if you retire today would be a decent amount of money depending on your lifestyle. $1 million in 20 years is not going to be what it is today. And in 40 years is going to be even less, right? Because everything's getting more expensive, inflation. So whatever number you want, just all you have to do is, if you want 2 million, just double. If you want 3 million, just triple that number. So if you're 20 years old, you only got to put away $113 away, and you end up with $1 million. You're 25, $178. It's very like, just don't go to Starbucks for like 2 days, right? Age 30, $282. By 35, it's $451. By the time you reach 45 years old, it's like a mortgage payment or property tax. Live $1,200 a month. By the time you reach 50, to over $2,000 a month. By the time you're in your 60s, it becomes impossible for most people to achieve. So that's why it's so important to understand these principles and learn as soon as possible. Right? Now, I'm going to shift here. We're talking about building wealth. Now we're going to talk about leaving a legacy. Anybody have kids here? Yeah. Anybody online have kids? Okay. How about grandkids? The grandkids? Okay. Got a grandkid? Got a grandchild? How old's your grandchild? 8 months. That's perfect. Right? Now, some people don't want to leave their kids anything. Okay. I'm not talking to you. Okay. But their grandkids are like, they're going to fend for themselves. That's cool. But this is not for you. You can mute right now. Okay. But anybody who ever thought, I would like to leave a legacy for my family or for my grandkids. So sometimes we didn't get our opportunity to do this yet for our kids, right? Maybe you want to do this for your grandkids. So is it easier to leave $1 million per grandchild or per child, or to build money up so they have $1 million later on? Well, we're going to show you some math. Okay. What are the challenges of leaving a legacy? People are living longer, right? Medical bills are getting more expensive. Healthcare is more expensive. And then long-term care that can literally wipe through $1 million in a matter of 5 to 10 years, depending on how sick you get. Okay. So this is the challenges that people are facing to try to leave a legacy. So let me give you an example of how you can get to leaving $1 million by growing it. If you took $13,000 when your grandchild was just born, right? Not too long ago, and you were to put $13,000 aside for that grandchild or for your child, and you only made 6.5%. We're not talking about 9%. We showed you earlier the difference between 6 and 9 was significant. So we're being even more conservative here. This could end up being 2 to 3 times more than that, depending on the situation. But at 6.5% annual interest, compounded monthly, by the time that kid reaches age 67, there'll be $1 million in income. That's the power of compound interest. Now, do you know if you start at age 18, you put that same amount, it's only going to be worth $311. That's the power of starting early. Well, let's say, hey, I don't have $13,000, a little bit too much. I got other expenses I got to deal with. Okay. Well, how about $2,500? And then follow that up with $250 a month for 4 years for a total of $12,000. Then let that money sit. Again, 6.5%, still get to $1 million. It's a lot more doable, right? Because you think about, I know when you think about your kids and you want to get them the best gifts and you want to make sure, some people like to spoil their kids because, God forbid somebody else has something nicer than your kids and so on. Everyone's got a different mentality here. Well, how about, what do you think is going to make them happy? What do you think is going to remember? That toy or that thing that you bought them that wasn't necessarily useful today? Or when you let them know, hey, if you're good to me, you get $1 million. Yeah, I think this is going to probably be something that gets their attention, right? And by the way, you don't have to give it to them unless they deserve it, right? It's more money for you if they don't, right? But again, if you wait until age 18, $313,000. So there's a variety of ways to get to the $1 million, to use the $1 million baby strategy. It's just one option. Now, when we talked about compound interest, we have to talk about the principles. One of the reasons why I'm standing here today is someone shared with me the magic of the rule of 72. The rule of 72 is the most powerful mathematical concept ever created to help you understand how compound interest works. Okay. So I've learned all these, how many rules that we learn with mathematics and all that stuff? This is the only one that really matters. Okay. Unless you're an engineer. Okay. And here's how it works. If you take the number 72 and you divide it by the interest rate you're earning, it'll tell you how many years it takes your money to double. Okay. So let's just pretend that you have a savings account right now that's paying you 1%. Okay. That means it'll take you 72 years for your money to double. So let's take a look at how this works. Okay. If I get 1%, 72 years, my money will double. Okay. So take your age right now. Everybody think about their age in your head. At 72 years, I think we'll have one person still alive in the room. That'd be you. You might be still, you'd be 95 though. You'd be 95. So you'd be breathing. We're gone for sure. The rest of us in the room, we're not going to be there. Now that's if you make 1%. What is the bank paying these days? We'll get into that. Okay. Less than that, right? Many banks. If I make 3%, now we're going back to remember that original chart. Now we're showing you how to kind of break that down even further. It'll take you 24 years for your money to double. Well, 24 added to my age, still a long time, but better than 72. I'd probably still be around, hopefully. But if 6% in 12 years now, Susan, in 12 years, right? You see your money double, right? At 6%, not bad. 9% every 8 years, right? Big difference. And if you're fortunate enough to find a place that can pay you 12%, your money will double every 6 years. Okay? So, what's the average bank savings right now? Roughly 0.15%. Unless, of course, you're a member of Chase, that's 0.01. They don't change their interest. They just make sure we keep people right where they should be, right? 0.15%. That means it will take 480 years for your money to double. Wow. I mean, it should be illegal for this to happen, right? But it's not. It's legal. But that same institution that will pay you 0.01% if you want to borrow from them. So in other words, that's how it works. You lend your money to them, because that's what you're doing. You put it in savings. And they give you 0.01, or maybe you're lucky you're getting 1%. Okay. And then they say, well, welcome to XYZ Bank. We're so happy to have you. Thank you for being a loyal customer. Yada, yada, yada. We're going to give you a credit card, right? And we're going to give you some points and whatever they can do to entice you, right? But we're going to charge you 22%. Right now, it's like 26. It's not 22 is actually decent. Yeah, good credit for that. It's like 26 to 28% is what I've been seeing on people's credit and debt statements that I've seen. So that means that the debt will double every 3.2 years. This is why people can't get out of debt, because they don't understand this. So that concludes my depressing part of my part of the class. We're going to bring Todd up here to give everybody a little bit of hope. His job is to educate you on the strategies and how we can help you. So Todd and I have been partners for over 20 years. We'll have a similar background, but he's one of our certified financial educators as well. He's one of the best teachers we have. So make sure you pay close attention to Todd tonight. Let's give him a big hand.
All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Boy, isn't it powerful to see some of that? How many people do you think, we saw that 30% of people are financially literate. I mean, 70% of people, it's probably the first time if they were on tonight, it was the first time they saw anything like that in the wealthiest country on earth. And I think that's sad. That's why we're on a mission to reach out to communities and really share this information. The part I'm going to share is, and if you have the book, some of you who are on the Zoom tonight and our audience here tonight, you've got the book, How Money Works. And in that book, the culmination of that book really is the 7 money milestones. And what this 7 money milestones really is a glide path. It's a strategy to know, hey, are you on track for your goals to become financially what? Independent. How many people do you think would like to one day have a work optional lifestyle one day? You wake up in the morning, you can work if you are called to, if you want to be relevant in people's lives, if you want to do something you enjoy doing, but finances don't dictate to you that you have to work. That's living in a want to world, not a have to world. And when I look at the 7 money milestones, that's how well we follow this is I think key. And so it starts with financial education. We're going to talk about proper protection, emergency fund, debt management, cash flow, building wealth and protecting what you've built. And so this is going to be drinking from a fire hose. So because we're going to pack a lot in here. But the first part is financial education. I think we've touched enough on how important Anthony covered basic things, guys, concepts. And the neat thing is, of course, if you haven't read the book, right, that's your first step. Read the book that we have. And the purpose of the book is we wanted to have something so sickening simple that you could read it in 1 or 2 hours. You could know more than 95% of Americans about personal finance. That's a sad statement to make, but it's true. But does it stop there? Does financial education stop there? No. One of the reasons I got in this industry, by the way, Anthony mentioned we had a similar background. I cut my teeth early in life in the entrepreneurial world by running my own painting business in college. Well, I was a student at U of I in Champaign. And I learned a lot about entrepreneurialism. I learned a lot about, business at the time. But one thing I kind of, after a while, there's only so much more you can learn about painting. Like, I got it down now. I could paint a house. I know how to do that part. You didn't learn, it was like kind of boring after a while. One thing that I shifted gears and came into this industry is I was blown away by the Rule 72 because in 5 years at college, I never learned that rule for some reason. Maybe I skipped class that day. That's possible. But I never learned that. Something basic that everyone should know. How could I have not learned that at one of the best universities in Illinois? Okay, well, it piqued my interest that, hey, is there more to learn here? And guess what? In the 27 years I've been doing this, every single day I learned something new. So the journey never like, hey, I got it. I could check the financial literacy box. No, it's always an ongoing thing. And the best way to help you, I think, for most people, to work with someone who is ahead of you. If there's a minefield, okay, and you want to get to the other side of the minefield, you better find some footprints in that minefield that you can put your feet in so you don't blow up. That's what a financial professional can help lead you and guide you. So I think that's one of the most important things. Number two is really proper protection. Now, when you think about protection, what do you want to protect? Now, we have lots of things to protect. What do you think is the most valuable asset that we have? What do you think it is? What do you think the most valuable asset that you have is?
House.
It's a house, right? Right? That's what a lot of people would say. Michael actually knows the real answer. He's playing along. Okay. Some people say it's my 401k. That's my most, because you can see it. You can see it. You're right. Oh, there's the number. That's how much. That's the most. No, it's actually our ability to earn income. So we have to ask ourselves, what is our economic value to our family? I have a 10-year-old and 15-year-old. If I don't make it home tonight, is that going to cut short their goals of going to college or having the life they want to start off? Is my wife going to be in a position where she could pay the mortgage, pay all the bills that are there? So we have to think about what value we have and bring to the table. And how do you quantify it? How do you know? We're priceless, right? Everyone, we're priceless. But you can actually figure out what you're financially worth to your family. Okay. And there's rules of thumb. One way to look at it is, hey, 10 times your income. If you were making $50,000 a year and you had $500,000 of protection, something happened to you, your family gets 10 years of your income. Maybe that'll be enough to get you out of the woods. Maybe your kids can, get to past college and be, of course, nowadays your kids are in their 20s and they're still in their parents' pocket, right? So this is a general rule of thumb. By the way, if people had that much coverage, it would be a lot more than what the average person has. The average person has 1 or 2 times their income, and guess what they have it through? Their job. And they think that's enough because they don't understand this. What I would look at is, if I was going to have a certain amount of protection, I'd ask, of my protection, what jobs would I assign to that protection? If something were to happen to me, what would be some things that I want that to do for me, that life insurance to do? Would I want to pay off my debt? Would I want to make sure my house was paid off so that my wife or my husband, if that was the case, couldn't pay it themselves? If it was my intention to put my kids through college at some point or help with that, would I want a premature death to prevent them from having that? What about income? So I would want to be very granular about figuring out, and that's where a financial professional comes in to help us figure out what it should be included. All these things are things that should be included in that. But what I'll tell you is there's a paradox out there, and this is from insure.com, a study that was done that shows the very same people who underestimate how much insurance they need are the same people who overestimate how much it really costs. Guess what? Insurance is pretty cost effective, and it's gotten a lot cheaper over the years because why? Most of us are living a longer life now. The longer we tend to live, the cheaper insurance becomes. But only 59% of Americans even have any life insurance, and half of those are grossly underinsured. Let's talk about 2 basic kinds, just so you can understand what are there's 2 broad brushstrokes here, basic kinds of coverage. One is temporary insurance, also known as term insurance. Now, what does that mean? It means it lasts for a certain amount of years, whatever you pick, 10, 20, 30 years. What's some advantages of term insurance? Does it cost a lot? No, it's cheap. It's cheap. Well, that's cheap, Todd. Well, that's what I should get. Isn't that what everyone should just have a term policy? Yes, I think that most people should have a term policy. Is it all you should have? It depends. Okay. If anyone, by the way, there's the other one is permanent. You can see it right on the screen. Okay. If anyone says that there's only, hey, you should, oh, permanent is the only thing you should have, or term is the only thing you should have, you should run, because that person probably has a quota. That person is not in the financial literacy business. They're in the sales business. Okay. Because just like you go to a job site, if you're going to build a house, you have lots of tools in your belt. If you showed up to the job site and all you had was a hammer, every problem looks like a nail. Okay. So you want to have all the tools. Term is great for certain things, timeline events. What are those things? Well, raising kids. When my kids get out of the house one day, hopefully I did a good enough job where they're on their own and not in mom and dad's pocket anymore. Well, that falls off my responsibilities at that point. If I pay off my house one day, term would be a great thing to match up with the length of my mortgage. What about college? Same thing with my kids, kind of thing, right? Running a company, or your prime working years where you're most financially vulnerable, when you're making the most money, that's a great time for term insurance. Okay. However, what happens when the term runs out? There's two possible scenarios. One is you no longer need life insurance. Congratulations, you did all the right things. You saved, you invested correctly, you used the Rule 72 to your advantage, for you, not against you, right? And you have plenty of wealth where you're called self-insured. That would be a wonderful scenario. However, how many people get divorced, refinance their house, have a second family? All of a sudden they have a lot of responsibilities that they never thought they'd have at 55, 60 years old, and no more insurance. What happens if they got diabetes or had some other ailment that prevents them from getting more coverage when they needed it? Would that be a problem for a lot of people? So you still need life insurance. What happens if you can't qualify? So something we look at and refer to all the time is the X wave. And the X wave is really, it's a simple kind of blueprint for how we live our lives, or should. We start off having a lot more responsibilities early in our life, all the things we talked about. And over time, we'd like to get rid of our kids out of the house, at least, right? We want to pay off our house, we want to pay off our debt. We want to reduce our what? Responsibilities. At the same time, we want to be focusing on building our wealth, hopefully in accounts that make 9, 10% over time. And one day we get to this magical place where we have lots of money and not very much responsibility. Isn't that what that sounds like? Work optional lifestyle to me. Okay. But there's some other things at the other side of this that we still may need some protection for. Okay. And that's where permanent life insurance comes in, because we may have the term for all those other things, which are important major things. And you want to spend a little, you don't want to beat the insurance company, by the way, and die too soon. Okay. I would love to never cash in on my term policy, because that means I live a long life. But is anyone getting out of here alive? No, we're all good. We all know, we know the day we're born. We don't know the day we're going to end up leaving this earth. Right. So that's where permanent, it's like, it's something, to have something in your portfolio that pays when you die, not if you die. You think that might be an important thing? For what? Well, let's talk about what that could be for. Number one, you could build a legacy. You could actually build, if you fund a permanent policy correctly, you actually build another stream of income, a supplemental stream of income in retirement. If you have enough cash that grows in there, it grows cash. Okay. Lots of tax advantages in that. And also something that's a really recent development is long-term care. And long-term care is all the things Anthony talked about. My own family went through that with both my stepdad and my dad. They both went through hundreds of thousands of dollars before dying, did not have the protection in place, couldn't get the protection in place, and left my stepmom and my mother with not as good of a situation they could. long-term care protection can be added. So what are some things you could do with cash value? I just bought a car for my wife, so it's her car. But instead of our interest rates on car notes very high right now, they're a little bit higher, right? Even with great credit. So what I am able to do, thankfully, is borrow the money out of my life insurance policy and pay myself back that way. So you can do that as opposed to paying a bank. I'm just paying myself. Of course, vacations are not the ideal use for it, but you can. Weddings, anything you can think of that you want to use that money for, if you needed it, was there. Grows tax free. It's creditor free. In many cases, zero market risk as well. And it's tax-free income later in life, okay? But another key thing that's really happened the last 12 or 13 years or so is being able to also have that death benefit be also a long-term care benefit at the same time. So let's say you have $500,000 of life insurance that's permanent and you didn't die, but you got sick first, okay? Well, what if you had no long-term care, what are you going through? You're going to go through all your 401k, you're going to go through all your investments, all the things that maybe your spouse was hoping that he or she could use, but you had to use that to pay for your care. Instead of that, why not have first responder money to handle that, which is your actual death benefit? Your life insurance can be turned into a long-term care pool. And here's the thing, 70% of people over 65 years old will need long-term care. It's not like, hey, well, I got full coverage on my car or how many people total their car? Not 70%. How many people their house burns down the ground? Not 70%. But we pay tons of money to that. What about our iPhone? We certainly have to have insurance on our iPhone. Does 70% of our iPhones end up in the toilet? Probably not. 70% of us are going to need long-term care. Okay, so it's almost as assured as death itself, but only 8% of people have any protection for that or prepared for it. And it's not cheap, guys. Okay, nursing home, $350. That's an average cost over 3.9 years. These numbers are only going up at a lot faster than inflation, by the way. Take a screenshot of that at home so I don't have to read each number because it's too depressing. But just know that this is real and these are real costs. And in the past, what people did is they bought a standalone long-term care policy. And I'm not going to get in all the weeds of this, but I will say a standalone policy, you pay a premium for that same pool of money, but that premium they didn't know how to price it in the 80s. All that's happened to the premium is it's gone up big, like years where it's gone up 30-40%. So it's a lot. The other problem there is that most of it is reimbursement. So if you're someone who has Alzheimer's, how are you going to remember what bills to send into the insurance company? Okay. And then get reimbursed. Also, what if you are part of the 30% and you just died? You didn't need the long-term care. Okay. You spent all those premiums to do what? Get nothing. So that's the problem with traditional old way of taking the protection of this. Nowadays, we get this added to your life insurance policy for very low amount of money. Why? Because your death benefits are going to pay out. The insurance company said, you know what? Let's just also make that a pool for long-term care. So these are some concepts. How many people do you know that don't even have any clue about that's even available? I promise you it's a very small number, very small number. Critical and chronic illness are also things that could be added. If you have a term insurance policy, by the way, just a term policy, 20-year term, whatever, do you know if you could pay like $15-20 a month for something? It's so cheap. Would it make sense to pay, instead of $20, pay like $21 and have critical illness, or meaning if I had a heart attack, stroke, cancer, anything like that, it pays part of the term policy? How many people have some kind of living benefits on their term insurance? I could tell you it's less than 5% of the people that I've spoken with. So that's just a little bit about protection. That's 30,000 feet overview right there. There's so much more to talk about with that, but for the sake of time, we'll get into the next one, which is a one-pager. Emergency fund. Anyone have any emergencies happen to them? Did you plan on having an emergency? Like, did the emergency or did it creep up on you? It's like, crap, I have an emergency, right? That's how it happens. You know, and here's what emergency fund is. It's a buffer between you going into debt to pay for that and then being on the other side of that interest payment. The 22%, pulling out the credit card to pay for it. What's recommended is 3 to 6 months in a place that's liquid. Liquid just means how easily accessible it is. So your sock drawer, that's the most liquid place. Then the ATM machine, that's the next one. But guess what? Most people who do have an emergency fund, they're getting that 0.02% that Chase is paying them. Okay. Chase doesn't be like, oh, poor Anthony. Anthony's only getting 0.02. I know what we're going to do. Let's give him a call. Let's let him know. Anthony, did you know the Federal Reserve is paying us 4.5% for holding on to your money? Why don't we give you 4 of it? Was that a fair deal for you? Do you think they're going to do that? No, because you have to seek out that information. The risk-free return on emergency funds is 4%. If you're not getting 4%, everyone in TV land, if you're not getting 4% on your emergency fund, you're not doing it right. And someone's lying to you. There's a middleman that's a very expensive middleman, and you're paying for a big brick and mortar building. Get 3 to 6 months of your income in a safe place, making at least the highest rate you can get on the marketplace today. Okay. Debt management. Look, this is a big challenge. We see right here, almost $29,000 is the average what Americans have outside of their mortgage in terms of debt. Do you think that your financial health and your physical health are linked? Do you know how many people they toss and turn, have nightmares, and think about their debt and how they're ever going to get out of this problem? And the good news is there's solutions to doing that. We're not going to cover all of them, but the first thing is you got to know where you're at. If you're trying to get somewhere and your GPS can't find where you're at, it's certainly not going to be able to tell you where to go if it can't find the signal. So you got to know where you're at now. Know what you owe. Commit that you're never going to make another late payment as long as you have any debt, because that's just going to compound on top. Set target one debt at a time. So you don't, hey, I'm going to pay a little extra to all my debts. No, find the one either that's the lowest balance and pay that one out first, or the highest interest and pay that one out first, and focus on do the minimum on everything else. It's called debt roll-up strategy. Okay. Stop charging. The best way to get out of a hole is stop digging. Okay. And then refinance. A lot of times you can finance. Okay. So we're gonna cut the brakes on that one, because there's a lot you can get, but just know there's solutions. Some of the solutions, by the way, of getting out of debt is you need to make more money, baby. Okay, and we'll get into this one. Okay, increasing cash flow, earn additional income. One of the fastest ways to actually get out of debt is to find a way to increase your business acumen, building up something more beyond what you're getting for your 9 to 5. Did you know that most jobs, they're paying you? In fact, any public company has to pay you just enough so you don't quit. And most people work just hard enough not to get fired. And just enough plus just enough equals what? Not enough. It's not enough. Okay. So some of this cash flow part is about budgeting. It's about recognizing your wants versus your needs. It's about saying, all right, all the things that the sucker cycle, right? Being aware, looking at, you know what I did when Donna quit her job back in 2006, and I was like, look, okay, she would work with me together in the business, and it's like, okay, this is it. No more safety net. But I love to spend money. Does anyone like to spend money? I hope so. I mean, like we like to enjoy the fruits of our labor. Yes. Yes. Okay. Unfortunately, most of us enjoy the fruits too much. Okay. A little bit. Okay, because we're not aware, right? You see the Starbucks thing, and our hands just do this in the steering wheel. We can't even control it. You don't even know why we did it. Why? Because we have a habit. Our habits are running our life. That's what happens. We have a habit that runs our life, and we have to start new habits that actually serve us. When I was caught unaware of my own spending habits back 20 years ago, what I did to figure it out, I journaled. I wrote things down, everything. For 6 months, I wrote down everything I spent money on. Pack of gum, coffee, whatever it was. Because in the moment, we think that's $2, that's $5, that's $4. In fact, that's not a lot of money. You ever hear of death by 1,000 cuts? That's what that is. And when I peeled back the curtain on my own life, I realized I was spending over $1,000 back 20 years ago without kids on just eating out. Okay, problem. You know what I did though? I just changed one thing. I woke up 15 minutes earlier and made myself breakfast and lunch every day. And Donna, do I still do that? I do. Okay. Very rarely to go out and eat. When we do, we enjoy the heck out of it, don't we? It's not like, oh, I'll just go out to eat again, blah, 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 blah. And then like, oh, $30, $20 later. No, when we go out to eat, we really enjoy it because it's intentional. Okay. So if you're going to spend money, have it be intentional so you can enjoy it. Don't make it something that escapes your awareness. So develop a written game plan. Shave spending on car and home insurance. Reposition your savings. Drop your private mortgage insurance if you own more than 80% of your house. Some basic things. Okay. But here's the 3 big moves. Number 1, get a side gig. You know how many people do little things on the side? Side hustles. Anyone have a side hustle or know someone who does? You can make okay money doing that. Little make extra money. Now, the truth is, I think that you're trading dollars for your time, and that usually we don't have, what do we all have the same amount of 168 hours a week? We all have that. So if I'm trading time away, yeah, giving up on something else in equal proportions that you may enjoy doing. Okay. But if you need to sacrifice a little bit to get out of debt, is it worth it? Okay. What about starting a business? Now, for me, that was my answer. 27 years ago, actually before, when I started my painting business, but coming into this, I knew after college I didn't want to go the 9-to-5 route. I even interview. You think how happy were my parents after college, 5 years at U of I. I said, Mom, Dad, I'm not going to do any interviews. What? Why'd you go to college? Okay, what did we spend all this money for? Because I had the entrepreneurial bug. I didn't want anyone to control my life, and I want to control the level of income that I could have. And so becoming an entrepreneur is not for everybody, but there's a path that people can take. And I took it here in this company to build my own business. Okay. Number 3 is basic things like just adjust your W-2 allowances so you can get maybe a little bit more money back. So you don't have to pay every month. Actually, you don't want to have the government taking your money all year long just so you can get a refund because they just took your money and made the interest themselves on your money. Does that make sense? You get that money yourself. Okay. Step 6, building wealth. This is an exciting one. When you got those other things in place, see how we're doing on time. When we have the other things in place, the next dollars that you can commit to is to have your money work harder than inflation. Your next dollars have to work harder for you. Okay. If they're not, you'll never see the 9%. You'll never see those numbers Anthony was talking about. So, but to do that, you have to have education. If you don't understand how money works, you'll never get more than 3 or 4%. You know how we know this? Because the stock market has averaged about 10% the last 100+ years. The average equity investor, someone who pretends they know what they're doing, makes 2 to 3%. Why? They have no emotional discipline, no knowledge, no understanding of how it works. Every time things go up, they're excited, they get in. When things go down, they get scared and get out. They do the exact same wrong thing what are you supposed to buy low and sell high? Is that what you're supposed to do? Yeah. We're not wired that way because we're emotional. And the thing to build wealth, the key to building wealth is you have to be able to handle those ups and downs. That's your ticket in. And so I'm not going to talk about stock market or anything like that, but that's how are you going to get 9 or 10% over your lifetime? You have to understand those ups and downs. Okay. But there's also 4 major threats you have to get to. One is procrastination. I think Anthony already nailed that one, right? Procrastination is hands down our favorite form of self-sabotage. Okay. It's just like, I'll get to it later. Isn't it easy to do that? Come on. Like, it's like, oh gosh, I want to start saving. But there's this party. Once we pay for this, little birthday party, then then it's always sometime in the future, then we'll get started. And tomorrow never comes. So procrastination, number 1 problem. Okay, once we solve that, then we have to be able to stomach the losses, right? inflation and taxes. So let's talk about inflation first. That's been a little bit of buzzword in the last few years, hasn't it? Still a little bit of a buzzword. See, oh, well, inflation's come down. So not a problem, right? Yeah, except it was 9% for a whole year. It just slowed down how fast it was getting more expensive. A lot of people, oh, inflation's down, that means things cost less. No, they're just costing more at a slower rate. Does that make sense? So we're still 16 to 17% higher cost of everything we spend our money on from just a couple of years ago. And does that impact our money? Well, let's plug the average rate of return over the average inflation rate over the last 100 years, 2.8%. Let's put in the rule 72. See what happens. Well, 72 divided by the average 2.8% equals 25.7 years. It means on average, the value of our dollars get cut in half every 25 years. So when you want to retire, okay, I'm 65 years old, I want to retire. All right. Does inflation stop just because you decided to stop working? Okay. When you're 85, 90 years old, that check that you thought was, oh, I'll just be able to live on this $4,000, it's worth $2,000 now. Okay, so we have to account for inflation in everything we're doing around our investment plan. Okay, and at the same time, we have to understand, hey, you could swing for the fence. You know, now this is talking to the other person out there who's like, I got the Robinhood account. Tell me all the latest stock tips. I want to swing for, you know. And as soon as all your buddies start, if they do this, start talking about how they're making a killing on this and a killing on that, and it's like, oh my God, my account. Guess what? That's the time you should probably sell. Okay, I'm just saying, because that's when things are a little bit bloated. I just know that losses mathematically hurt. Okay. Do you know that if you were at a gambling table, right? And let's say that you made you had $100, you made $100, you doubled up. You feeling pretty good, right? What if you lost $100? What hurts more? What does it hurt more than it feels good, right? It hurts more to lose the money than it feels good to make the same amount. Wouldn't you say? Like if you lost $100, you'd feel terrible. You'd feel worse than how good you felt to make $100, right? That's prospect theory. And that's actually also true mathematically, because if you start with $10,000, you lost half of it, you lost 50%. Do you have to you get 50% return? We'll just get your money back, right? You lost 50. No, you got to make 100% return just to get your money back. So you have to be careful. You can't be just swinging for the fences and buying all the latest cool things that your friends are telling you about. You know, your Uber driver just making a killing and he's driving you around is like telling you the next stock to buy. Maybe you shouldn't listen to that advice. Okay. Impact of taxes. Well, how important is taxes? Outside of death, it's the only thing that's guaranteed, right? They say. Well, it may impact how you handle your tax strategy, may impact your retirement, what you pay to the government, okay, which does a great job with our money, I think, right?
Yeah.
Maybe not. Leave to your children how much you have as a legacy to leave to your heirs. Okay, now I know everyone wants to slide into their grave with their last dollar. Okay, right? Yeah. Or do you want to actually have a plan that maybe it's not your kids? Maybe it's something that you really care about, like a charity. Okay. Well, all that matters when it comes to taxes. And there's only 3 ways your money gets taxed. Number 1 is tax now. Everything you're doing that you put money into a tax now account, you pay each year. You get a 1099 for it every year, whatever you made, you pay the tax now. And so what happens there is, well, if you made 8%, you paid 2 back, you're at 6. And next year you make 8, you pay 2 back, you're at 6. Does that slow down your growth of your money when you can't compound the full 8? Yes. That's why people have 401. Who's ever heard of a 401k? Hopefully everyone, right? 401k, IRAs, those are called qualified 403bs, 457 plans. That's the alphabet soup of retirement plans. Everything that, right? Those are all IRS tax codes that say, hey, you can actually put your money in a place that's before taxes. You didn't pay taxes when you put it in, and it grows without paying tax as it grows, right? Tax deferred, they call that. Tax later, though. When do you pay? Later, when you take it out. Okay, the last one is tax never, which isn't entirely true. It just means you paid your taxes already when you made the investment. You already paid your income tax, then you made the investment, and then it grew tax deferred. But when you take it out, you pay no taxes. So would you rather pay the taxes conceptually now on the seed or the harvest? Which one would you rather pay tax on, the seed or the harvest? The seed. Okay. Now guess what? If taxes are the same as they are today as they are 30 years from now, it really doesn't matter. But do you think that the IRS might be hungry for some of our dollars? $36 trillion in debt? Who do you think, who thinks that taxes are going up in the future, not down? Okay, that's every single person in the room. All right, probably online too. So that just means, well, if you got $1 million in your 401k, you just have to ask yourself, how much is it really? Do you know? Can anyone tell me what it's really worth? The answer is you don't know, because you don't know what Uncle Sam's appetite is going to be, how big of a partner they want to be in your own retirement. Okay, later on. So that's a pretty big dice to roll. We like to have strategies that actually have money in every one of these buckets, and we can get much more detailed with people as in a planning format. 3 components of reliable retirement income. So these are 3 things that our retirement plans should have in them. One is we have to be able to have potential for growth. We have to be able to, for part of our portfolio, stomach some ups and downs. Because if you can't, just be ready to get 3 or 4% for the rest of your life. That's the bottom line. All right. So for part of our money, did I say all of the money? No, I said part of the money. Now, some of our money, we have to make sure we're protecting and saying, you know what? We don't want this to lose. We want this to grow. Hey, you know what? I don't need to 8-9% on this money. Maybe I get 5-6%. Still better than the bank. Yes, but protect me from downsides. I don't want it to go backwards on what's going on right now. It's happening. Okay. Now, these 2 here combine to form something that is like a fund money in retirement. We'll call that the play check. So all the bucket list items you want to do in retirement. I want to travel around the world. I want to go eat at that restaurant every Friday that I deprived myself of when I was in my working years. I want to do the things I always wanted to do. Play check. What about this last one? Paycheck. Have enough money with your Social Security, any pensions you have a portion of your assets give you reliable, guaranteed income for life, lifetime income that you can't outlive, that we could say kind of like a pension. So we could say, look, all these things together, you add them all up, it pays for all my bills. You know, my happiest clients are the ones that when they're in retirement, all their bills are paid no matter what. That they don't even have to worry. The market's doing what it's doing today. They don't care. Why would they care? They know it's going to come back. They're not living on that money. They have other resources that they're living on, and that's the way to be happy. Okay. All right. Last one, protecting our wealth. So having an estate plan is not just for the family with the big house on the hill. It's for every single person. Okay. But what did Aretha Franklin and Prince have in common? Even though they had $150 million and $80 million estates, no estate plan. So even people with the big house on the hill didn't have one. What about the average people out there? Okay. So what is 64%, 2/3 of Americans, just call it rounded up. 2/3 of Americans don't have a simple will. In other words, if you don't have a will, the government's gonna have a will for you. It's the government's plan. Whatever the courts say, the money where it goes, and all the people who make a claim on that and fight it out in probate court, they're the ones that are going to decide where your money goes, unless you have a plan yourself. The will is a basic thing that can be done very simply, which just identifies, hey, look, if I have kids, you know, just because I have godparents that I when my kids got baptized, right? Did anyone have their kids get baptized? The godparents are there. Does that mean that they're legal guardians? Not unless I did the paperwork. Okay. So the will identifies who those legal guardians are if we predecease our kids before they become age of majority. You know, and also what if I have special needs child? Who's going to take care of them after I'm not here? Right? Where will my stuff be distributed? Power of attorney. Very similar. If I'm not able to handle if I can't pay my own bills, My aunt has dementia right now. She can't pay her own bills. So we all have to do that. She has given power of attorney for us to be able to handle, because otherwise her nothing would get paid, including her long-term care policy, probably, right? Advanced healthcare directives. If I'm not in a position to make my own healthcare decisions, did I assign someone else who, hey, you have the power to do that? And by the way, this is what I want while I'm sane. This is the things that I want done if I had my health was compromised. That's a healthcare directive. And then HIPAA, making sure that we can have access to our kids when they go off to college and they're 18. If something happened to them, if I don't have HIPAA, I don't have the ability. I can't even know what happened if it got sick and they're at the hospital. So these are all basic things you could do that's practically for free. Now, estate plan, an actual trust, is one thing that I think that if you own a home, if you have some assets, probably a trust makes sense to own, because a trust will protect you from probate, and so probate means that if I died and I own my own house personally, okay, well, my house then goes to probate court, even if it's in the will, and the courts are going to take 5 to 10% of the value of my house. If I have a trust, it bypasses that whole process and all the lawyers' fees and everything else. So having an estate plan like this, and there's very cost-effective ways to do it, but really what can a trust do? Manage your property after you become physically, cognitively impaired, protect the interest of your children who are currently incapable of handling money because they're too young, or maybe disability or illness. Maybe they have substance abuse issues. I don't want my ne'er-do-well, hopefully my daughters are fine later on, but if they're not, my trust could say, look, I don't want them to have the money at this age. I want them to have it at 30 or after they get a solid career. And what does that career look like? When we put it in the trust, protect special needs children, provide privacy, since the trust is not filed in the probate court, so it's completely private. People can't see it. Everything else is a public record. Anyone can look at it, right? Avoid probate in multiple states if you own real estate in more than one state. Lower your estate taxes and provide added tax advantages for larger estates. All things that trust can do. So if you think it's going to be too expensive or too time consuming, that's one of the things that procrastination is there, right? That's an easy thing to procrastinate on. Real easy. But guess what? You don't have to sit in the stuffy office and have, what you think is the situation, how to put together. These things can be done with minimal costs. You have to talk to the right people who know who can do this. There are situations where you need more complicated trusts, and I'm not an attorney, but I know we work with companies that are very cost effective, for what basically most people need. You want to definitely check that one off your list. So in closing, so that was a lot, right? We got through a lot today. And obviously we can't learn everything in basically an hour. Okay. But what I would highly recommend, if any of this touched a nerve or any of this was something that you found to be valuable, is to get back with the person who invited you, okay, and say, how can I learn more? How can I be guided on this path towards my 7 money milestones? And I hope to see many of you again. Hope you enjoyed the food. And for those of you in TV land, I hope you enjoyed it. Same thing applies to you. And have a great night, everybody. Take care.